Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of This Comic Cooks. Guess what? We got a brand new show for you. This is going to be a monthly segment this month in Superman. This is the year 2025 to talk about Superman. I can't think of a better year. We got the movie coming out and we have some fantastic comics coming out. So I wanted to talk about it with two of my favorite Superman fans on this planet. Two guys that I associate with Superman and Batman. More than anyone else, I would say they are the host of Beer with Geeks, a fantastic podcast. They've been on the show before, but if you are new to the show, you should also check out Beer with Geeks because not only is it a fantastic podcast, but they are doing video now. Video with Geeks is fantastic. I think these guys are doing a great job. So let's start off with Electric Blue. Tim Gannon, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. I'm electric, baby.
Yeah. This is perfect.
Woogie, woogie. Oh, look,
I
look
love
I've got
it.
right up here.
Yeah.
Right.
Whoa!
Oh, wait.
It's little Tim. Oh! And Smallville's own Super Frank. Frank, how you doing today?
Hey, it is good to be back with you, Mr. Vactor, on a show called This Month in Superman.
Yes. I thought, what better way? And secretly, selfishly, I've been trying to get these two together for a while as far as like a recurring thing. Because we've had stuff in the past where it's been like, all right, we review this show or we review this comic, whatever it is. But I said, how can I get these guys on a recurring basis? I got to throw out the line and bait them. Superman was the perfect way to do it. And so basically, just in a nutshell, I want to talk about everything in the world of comics that relates to Superman on this show every month. So we're going to be talking about comics. We're going to be talking about movies, video games, TV shows, whatever it is. We're going to be talking about it here on This Comic Cooks. So I love that we are doing this, guys. And before we get into the news and the comics, I have a special shout out, a special mention, because Super Frank has returned. He has made his triumphant return to his local comic store, and I want to hear all about his experience getting back to the comic shop. Frank, would you do us the honor of sharing your experience, I guess, with comics in the last few years?
Yeah. I mean, I've been reading comics since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I really was in the sort of in the era of Infinite Crisis. That was sort of my from Infinite Crisis to about Final Crisis was sort of my heyday of reading most closely, and so that era holds a special place in my heart. Tim and I've talked about this a lot. Yeah, it's a very special time for me, and I love, I've at that time I was reading every time there was an event. I was reading every tie-in I could get my hands on. I was reading 52 and trying to understand why I was trying really more with Countdown. I'm trying to figure out why. Yeah, it's been I've fallen off the train and gotten back on it. I've got I was collecting floppies every week, every month for years there. I've got a handful of short boxes that I've lugged around with me to every home since. And I do like to thumb through them every so often. But yeah, it had been a while since it's been a while since I've collected comics. It's been a while even since I've read them. I mean, I've gotten back in excited, for things like when the New 52 happened and when Rebirth happened and lots of events in between. But those are the times when I'm usually like, all right, this is a good jumping back on point. Let me jump into this new story, or what have you. And Vactor, you had encouraged me to check out Absolute Superman. So that was on my radar. And then we talked about doing this. So I was like, well, I should probably, bone up and sort of brush up on what's been happening in the ongoing titles. Cause I just had been so out of it for so long. And it came to be my birthday. And my wife, Marissa, was like, let's spend the afternoon doing like the stuff you want to do. Like, let's go to a comic book shop. Let's go to a record store. And like, she was like, it's on me. Like, it's my treat. Go nuts for your birthday. So I was like, that sounds fun. All right, cool. That's a really fun activity. So I came home with a bunch of comics to catch up on, and a few records as well. And
Yes.
yeah, so that's how I sort of got caught up in the last few months worth of sort of like House of Brainiac and the Bizarro storyline before that in action. So I got caught up on those and then caught up on the issues since.
Okay, that is fantastic. Marissa, you are a gem. You are a, a crystalline structure in
Snowflake?
our. I love that she did that. That is fantastic. And I also love that Frank is reading comics again because also, I don't say this enough, and I'm going to do better in 2025. The goal of this show, the whole reason I do this show is to tell people that comic books are the greatest storytelling medium, in my opinion, in the world, in the universe, in the galaxy. And I want more people to read comics. And so it just brings me joy that you are reading again, also reading Superman. And on top of all that, Frank, I love hearing your journey and hearing your story. But Tim and I used to do a Batman podcast years ago where we were reading every Bat family. He's
Always
still
got
he's
Gotham
still
Central. Yeah.
representing. We used to read every Bat family title, and at the time, I was like, and also shout out to Hunter Camp who forced me to read every Bat family title because I
Same.
didn't want to do it at the
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
It ended up being like one of the best things that I did. Like I have such a fond memory for that time period when that was happening, and all of the things in the Bat family that I would not have been reading, but because of the podcast, we ended up reading those things. So I want to do that again but now for Superman. So this is a great opportunity for us to do that. So I'm really happy and overjoyed. Frank, can you give us for this first episode of this month in Superman? Can you give us some of your like just not highlights, but your overall sentiment of where is Superman right now in
Mm.
comics? Like how are you feeling about Superman in his current state?
Superman's in a really interesting place with the whole Supercorp situation. Which side note, I just have to laugh every time Supercorp is referenced because that was a shipper name that fans came up with for Supergirl when Supergirl was on the CW. That was the shipper name for Kara and Lena because she was the head of
Ah.
Luthor Corp. They were calling it
Ah.
Supercorp was the shipper name.
Nice.
So it's hard for me to shake that association
Ah.
whenever I but
Yes.
so that's like it's an interesting storyline that they're what I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on that particular development.
I have a general question for the podcast before we continue. Is that
Yes.
how much are we spoiling for each issue? And then, like I say, like even going back,
Yeah.
previous issues, because I don't want to say too much that
Right.
that might interfere with somebody's enjoyment. Or
Yes.
are they listening to this full well knowing we're going to talk about Superman books that have come out and of this past month?
Yes. Well, actually, I want to kind of do a best of both worlds. So I want to give freedom for you to talk about spoilers, but also, I guess, just give people a heads up like, hey, I'm going to be spoiling this. If you haven't read it,
Sure.
skip
Okay.
ahead. So I want to be able to talk about it and not have any restrictions on it, but also be respectful of people if they haven't read and they want to catch up on it. So let's do it like that. Let's just say spoilers ahead for all of the books that we're going to be talking about today, and we'll say the names of the books before
Yeah.
we spoil
Spoilers ahead.
them. Ding ding. Yes.
So yeah. Lex, I like the Supercorp thing a lot. I think it's fresh for Superman. To be like, so the whole point of Superman is that he inspires people. Well, not the whole point, but a large point of Superman is that he inspires people. And so, like, to have an entire company devoted to that inspiration, so he can do the best job possible, so they can save the city, they can save the world in the way that they they don't have superpowers, but they can still be a positive influence, take something that was quite negative, like Scorp, and turn it into something quite positive, Supercorp. That is a really, I think, strong storytelling, a good progression of Superman's world without feeling like a stunt if it keeps going.
Right. If it keeps going. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have that same opinion of I like that it doesn't feel like ground that we've been treading over and over again. It feels fresh, it feels new for Superman. And I also really I think the place that Superman is in right now, Superman is obviously one of the most popular characters of all time. And just like with Spider-Man over at Marvel, because of that, he gets the best writers and artists. And right now is such a fantastic time for the writers and the artists that are working on these Superman books. And that, like, absolute Superman is killing it. Superman, just Superman has Joshua Williamson, and my he if he's not the top, he is in the top two. My favorite artist is probably Dan Mora right now, and so any book that he's on, I'm going to read. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, his art is like Vactor nip. Like, it's like when I see it, I need it. I need to
Yeah.
read that story. So
Like the Jim Lee effect from a long time ago.
yeah,
'Cause
he was
he's
yes,
obviously in that same like art style, like the clean slash sketchy lines,
yeah,
dynamic action, like
Yes.
it's very, very similar. His own style, but he's not doing Jim Lee, doing Dan
right.
Mora.
Very much like if it's if it was a Hollywood blockbuster movie, like that's what this would be in comic form. It's like
Mm.
you want Dan Mora. If you're looking for like the action guy, it's Dan Mora, and very much similar to Jim Lee, who it's funny. I was just watching him on the official DC podcast. They interviewed Jim Lee, and he was talking about how he's currently doing Hush 2, and he
Mm.
hadn't been on a regular book for, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. He had just
Wow.
been doing covers. So he was like, "Yeah, I had to get used to like the carpal tunnel again,
Oh
and
man.
being like in a position for 8 hours." But his artwork is interesting to me, how it's kind of evolved over the years, because like 90s era Jim Lee, 2000s, like, is to me peak Jim
Mhm.
Lee. Like, that's when I think of Jim Lee,
Hmm.
that's the style that I think of. And then when New 52 Jim Lee, it started to be like, his art for me is changing a little bit, to the point where I don't know how to technically describe.
I think I know what you're talking about, and it's called how would I describe this? Too much too much bread,
Money.
too little butter. Like he's
Mm.
Ooh.
just spread too thin,
Mm.
and so he doesn't have the time to devote that he would say, like as when he was doing, like, that was his job to be the artist, but that's not really his job anymore.
Yeah.
It's his side gig while running a very large company.
Yes,
And that
that
was true
makes
in the New
sense.
52. That's true. It's going to be true for Hush. So it's just, and I think because he falls out of practice, a little bit because of that, he's just, um,
It
he's
makes
just not doing
sense.
it in and out every 7 hours a day, every day, as he said himself. So,
Yeah.
I think you're just looking at, in a weird way, you're almost looking at like, you were an amazing employee when you were single and not a parent,
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
you
Right.
know,
Yep.
and
A
now
hundred
you're
percent.
you're
Yep.
like as best as you can be, but also a parent, and
Yes. Yes.
so sorry everybody, but
Yeah.
you're only
That is a
getting what I can offer you.
that
Yeah.
is great. Yeah, that is a great analogy, and I think it holds true 100% for Jim Lee. But I did want to, at bare minimum, like I said, we were talking off mic before this about how we wanted to cover this. At bare minimum, I want to at least say what books came out for the month of January. And then if we have any specific highlights that we want to talk about, um, let's go ahead and do that. So, to kick off this month of January, January 1st, Absolute Superman number 3 came out. And to me, this is like, oh, first of all, the Absolute line is fantastic. Frank, did you get a chance to pick up Absolute Batman at all?
I did not read Absolute
Okay.
Batman. No.
That is my next recommendation to
Mhm.
you.
The man just got back into comics, man.
This is how it always is, Tim. This is how it
yes,
always is.
well, that, yeah,
The floodgates open, right? People are
Yes.
like, "You're reading one book? How about 12?"
yes. Now,
If you
I
could
think
spend $4.99 once a month, Greg, you could spend $49.99 every week. Let's
you
be
might
serious.
as well just subscribe to the DC app, which is I do love that they have a tier that is only 1 month behind versus Marvel's is like 3 months behind. But the Absolute line to me right now is my favorite thing in all of comics. Absolute Superman, Absolute Wonder Woman, and Absolute Batman are, to me, my favorite things that are coming out right now. And then what's weird is the same thing is over at Marvel. They're doing their ultimate. They brought back their ultimate line, and Ultimate Spider-Man is my favorite thing that's coming out right now from Marvel. So like these new reinterpretations of the characters are just hitting me like full on. So 100%, Frank, really love Absolute Batman. I would highly recommend it to you. But this Absolute Superman, Frank, I want to get your thoughts because I already know Gannon's thoughts. I
Sure.
want to get your thoughts on Jason Aaron and Rafa Sandoval's Absolute Superman. 3 issues in, what are you thinking about this take on Superman?
It's different, but it's kind of refreshing. I've actually I really liked issue number 3. I think it was in issue number 3 that we went back to Krypton and saw Jor-El and Mora.
Yes.
That was really, really a very cool take on that particular piece of the Superman story.
Yes.
That I really, really dug.
And am I mistaken? Is this the oldest we've ever seen Clark on Krypton? But I mean, not counting, when he goes back as an adult and he's like, all kind of side
As far
stories.
as like the planet hasn't exploded yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Is this the
believe it
oldest?
is the oldest.
I think
Okay.
so. Yeah.
Yes. That to me is like that. And that's the whole thing about these absolute and ultimate lines. It's like the butterfly effect of if you just change one thing, then how does that ripple out for the whole universe? And Absolute Batman is another thing that does that perfectly. Scott Snyder's like, Frank, you got to read Absolute Batman. As soon as we're done here, go straight to reading
my
Absolute
homework.
Batman. But I love
we won't
that.
talk about it on the show though, because the show is not about Batman unless he's in
this month in Batman. That's next. That's what our next
What am I supposed to
project.
do? Read it for fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Krypton story has been it's that like that the I'm sure there's a term for this in television and the movies, like when you're going back and forth between the A story and the B story of Krypton and then the Krypton in the past and then what's currently going on Earth, and you're getting these revelations of you found out, oh, that's Lois Lane, but she's different. This is a different take on Lois Lane. Oh, that's Crypto, or that's this thing happening on Krypton, but it's different. And that was to me, that was the genius about the Ultimate line when it originally came out for Marvel, was like, oh, it's all these characters that I love, but it's different takes on them without continuity, without the baggage and backstory. So that's what this Absolute line is doing. And to me, it has me just like the New 52, where it's like I am all in on this concept and this storyline. Gannon, for those who don't get to talk to you on a regular basis, how are you liking Absolute Superman so far?
I like it a lot. I do like Absolute Batman more. I think I'm with you there. But I like it a lot. So what you're referring to is the structure is called multiple timeline structure. That's what is going on, where they might the timelines might share similar themes, but they're running parallel to each other, and their stories don't technically directly connect to one another, apart from maybe they share the same characters, but they're not really about the same thing.
Right. And Lost used that structure a lot, where it was like, okay, the flashback was relating to the flash, like to the current timeline. Then they went to the flash forwards, like tying those two things together. And that's I think Absolute Superman is doing a
Yeah,
great
I think it a
job
lot like
at
The
that.
Godfather Part 2,
Yes,
where it's
yes,
like
yes,
it's, about Michael and his
yes.
father, but it's in 2
Mhm.
separate timelines, and they're going through similar things generations apart from each other, but it hasn't really they're never gonna meet. They're not gonna have that moment in Days of Future Past where the 2 Professor X's run through
Yes,
time,
yes,
Yes.
right?
yes.
That's a little different.
Yeah,
Um,
man. I can't, like, I can't overstate, like, how much I'm enjoying these Absolute books, and I was not familiar with, Sandoval's art before, but he is now one of my favorite artists. Like, the
Mm.
job that he's doing on, Superman and all these characters that we love is fantastic, and also, I gotta say, the idea to have his suit be an AI and the cape be is it like nanotechnology? Like the cape is like all these little things that
Yeah.
come together to be like a bigger
I
thing.
I love the cape idea personally because the freaking Incredibles like ruined capes in some ways. Or no capes, caught in an airplane, no capes. Yeah, and so
Yes, yes.
I just think Superman flies a lot, obviously, and yeah, it looks cool. But his cape doesn't serve a function the way
Mm.
that Batman's cape serves a function, right? It is part of his arsenal. Where
Right.
Superman's cape is just to look regal in some ways,
Mm,
to look
yes,
approachable with a man with a
yes.
cape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just really, really like that the cape serves a particular function. It reminds me of Spawn more than
Yes, yeah.
anything. Like
Oh,
his cape
yeah.
is like its own thing. It's a
Yeah, right.
weapon, and it's like slightly independent from him, and like can do cool things. And I just really like that. I like that idea, that indirect intertextuality between those
Mm.
two
Yes,
red
and
It's
cape
it's the
wearing comic
Aladdin's
figures.
carpet of this
yeah, yeah.
story.
And it's also like the AI technology part of it is grabbing me. And for those of you who have been following Frank and I for many years, we used to do a tech podcast, and we like our love of technology and tech is deeply rooted there. So when I see stuff like that, the AI ness of it,
Mm.
it just brings like real joy to my heart as well. And now this is my other recommendation for you, Frank. 100%. If you're not reading any Marvel books, Ultimate Spider-Man,
Mm.
that's all you need
Mm.
right now. He has a Pico suit, a Pico technology
Oh,
suit,
nice.
and it is like nanobots, and it can form like it's very similar to the black symbiote suit where it can form on his body, can
Uh,
change clothes and do all these different things. It is also an AI. It's like Siri in his like
sure.
Peter's talking to the suit. Anyways,
Sure.
that I love that concept of nanotechnology
Mm.
and little tiny robots that can change into something bigger. So
You never
it's
read
I
kind of
love
any
in
that, yeah.
vogue.
Jackal Crichton, have you? It's just-
Oh, well,
no,
the dangers.
it'll get you off nanobots real
I don't
fast.
want to know.
Yeah.
I don't want to know about the dangers of it. I don't want to know about the bad things. I just want to know about the good things. But I'm like all in on all these things. Like the technology of both of those books has
Mm-mm.
me like
Mm.
that is Vactor's kiss right there.
It,
So that okay.
it
Go
it
ahead.
strikes me that there have been several times in the last, let's say, 20 years where it has been uh where it's been a common statement to hear someone say Ultimate Spider-Man is the best book right now.
Yeah.
That has
Right.
been
Right.
like
It is
so
really
many,
good.
right? Like it's and I, even though this is a completely separate different title, but like still, like in the Mark
Yeah.
Bagley days, like that was
It's I mean, it's crazy. Like I said, just to the, it just gives you like, it tells you how good that idea is to tweak. I mean, that's the Elseworlds idea. Also, like,
yes.
just change one little thing, and
Mhm.
then what are the ramifications of that?
Yes.
And then throw the best writers out there, throw the best artists out there. And that's the formula for like a
Yeah.
really good book.
Ultimate Spider-Man is also doing something that a lot of comics don't do, and it's all in real time. So
Yes,
you read
that's right.
Ah.
issue
Yes, right.
12, it's
Hmm.
December,
Right.
and issue
Yes,
13 is January. A month goes by every single episode,
yes,
Cool.
or every single
Cool.
and
issue, and you have to catch up with what has happened in that month.
Yeah,
It ends on
yeah.
this panel. It's a month later, and you
Right.
just have to
yeah,
keep going, which makes for really engaging storytelling from a comic standpoint, because you can read 7 issues of a comic that take place over an hour,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so, case in point, see the 12 issue run of Action Comics that just existed, by Mark Waid. Like that was
Yeah. And that was
tons
weekly,
of
right?
issues. That was weekly,
That went
right?
Yeah.
weekly.
12
Yeah.
weeks,
Right.
but it only happened over a period of days, really.
Right.
Yeah. That was crazy. And that also lent itself to the nature of the storyline being in the Phantom Zone, like
Yeah.
being pulled out of time, like it feel like time behaves differently there. So yeah, that fit in a lot of those ways.
True.
The next week we had was January 8th, no major Superman appearances. So we gave Frank's wallet some time off there. But then the very next week, January 15th, we had Action Comics number 1082, part of the Superman Superstars storyline that's going on. And then Batman Superman World's Finest number 35, which I wanted to ask Gannon real quick. For Batman Superman, I was telling you off mic that Dan Mora leaving was a huge blow to me. I still love Mark Waid, but there was something about the combination of those two together that made Superman Batman World's Finest my favorite book of last year. And as soon as Mora left, I was like, oh, I can't do it anymore. I canceled my subscription to it. So how are you liking World's Finest after Mora?
So I also love Dan Mora. I've been a big fan of his since Once in Future, which was his King Arthur, which was the King Arthur book that he did at Boom Studios, I think.
Was
Which
this
is
a while
really
ago?
a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
That sounds familiar.
way before I think it was while he was doing Power
Yes.
Rangers or around that,
Yes.
somewhere in there, because he's a man of doing 2 books at one time,
Sure.
apparently. And
Must be
so
nice.
he's been doing that for a while.
That
And
was
so,
Boom. Yep.
yep. It's a really good. I highly recommend. But it's been Mark Waid's writing doesn't falter when when the artist is different, which is great. But also Adrian Gutierrez's art is he picks up the torch. He has his own style. It's a little more exaggerated, a little slightly more cartoony in the way that like his faces are drawn. Maybe slightly less chiseled in some way, but also more expressive. But it feels just as high energy and just as funny. And like I said, Mark Waid he hasn't dropped the ball on it. And so, I think his disconnect from continuity on it happened so long ago. It's while Dick Grayson's still Robin. So like he can kind of do anything as long as the main cast survives.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, you sold me. Shut up and take my money, Tim.
I will. I have nothing to do with it. I will take your money.
Well, I'm gonna start picking up World's Finest again, especially since we're doing this podcast. I'm gonna start. Then we had last week, which was January 22nd, Superman number 22 came out, which I'm, this is the one that has Dan Mora on it, and I'm a little bit behind on it, so that is my fault. But when
this whole show is about what's happening.
That's true, and I blame no one but myself and my son.
I was going to say,
the
he's
reason.
like, once the kid in the mix, it's like, of course you're behind. Of course you're behind. Like,
but I did want to say, when this Superman restarted at number 1, the artwork to me was what it made my eyes bleed. I was like, whoa. It was Jamal, and now I'm blanking on it. Jamal Campbell, and he had done the Green Lantern series with and now I'm blanking on that.
But Rafa Sandoval was also on Green Lantern and Superman before. You had mentioned before you had never seen him before, but you've definitely seen his art before if you were reading Flash, Green Lantern, Action Comics, like Teen Titans at one point. He's been around on the DC stables for a while. He's anytime he's on a book, I'm like, it's going to be good.
I should say recently, just a little background on my comics. I have been pretty Marvel centric recently, and ever since All In, DC has they have 95% of my attention. Like I said, I'm still Ultimate Spider-Man is still that might be my number one favorite book that's coming out right now. But DC has the majority, so I'm kind of getting caught up on a lot of this stuff. But Jamal Campbell's Far Sector was the Green Lantern book. His art to me, and I loved him on Naomi. That was another one that I did.
Right. That's where I know him from. That's
Yeah,
right.
it's like this cartoony, like an animation-y style, like a Pixar-y style, almost. Like it just makes you feel good. Like I love Jamal Campbell's art. So seeing him on Superman when that relaunched at number 1, I was like, oh man, I'm all in. Obviously, he's no longer on the book, but just the vibes of that still resonate with me. Like when I just saw the title, Superman number 22, in my mind, I was still thinking of Jamal Campbell's art, even though he's not on it anymore. So shout out to him. There is some books coming out tomorrow as we record this, January 29th. And I know Tim Gannon is super excited about Superman Lex Luthor special number 1, but also DC's Lex in the City, a Valentine's Day comic. And it's a play
I'm not
on.
excited. You know that. Don't. I said that book's going to cost $7.99 and barely entertain me. That's like almost my exact words.
I think that is 100% correct. But
you want to read that Lex Luthor special, though, just to be clear, it's the Lex in the City one that I don't care about, but I will read the special because I love me some Lex Luthor. Not enough to care what he's doing on Valentine's Day, but
well, the Lex Luthor special plays on that what was happening in House of Brainiac, and his memories got wiped. And this is after the events of the All In special number 1. So the world needs Lex to remember his past. We'll check that one out tomorrow. We'll report back maybe next month to see how that one did. So that was this month in Superman. But there was some Superman news that I wanted to talk to you guys about real quick. So this announcement kind of came out of nowhere. Superman Unlimited is a new title that's set to launch in May of this year. And the reason why this kind of stood out to me and made my eyes like bulge was that it's being written by one of my favorite Spider-Man writers of all time, Dan Slott. And this, first of all, the reason why he's one of my favorite Spider-Man writers of all time is because he is funny. And to me, you have to have a funny writer to really get Spider-Man, to get a good Peter Parker story. And also, Dan Slott, here's another one, Frank. Dan Slott's Spider-Boy has been fantastic. He created this whole new character, and it was one of those, oh yeah, he's always existed. You just didn't know about him. And the world forgot about this guy. Spider-Boy, he's been Spider-Man's sidekick this whole time. And it has been like the fun, the goofiness of it, like it just resonates. So that is another pick for Marvel is Dan Slott's Spider-Boy.
I do really like Dan Slott, so that's not a hard sell.
Yeah,
also
that's great. Yeah.
The artwork is going to be by Raphael Albuquerque, and he is one of my all-time favorite artists. Like the run that he had on Batman, was he on Detective or was it Batman?
I think it was
Detective. I think. Yeah, he had a great run on Batman, and I also love his name. I just love saying take that left turn to Albuquerque. This is a 0 issue that's going to be coming out on Free Comic Book Day in May. So I'm really excited to check out Superman Unlimited.
Yeah.
They ran out of adjectives, boys. They ran out of the absolutes and ultimates, and all right, we got to make it unlimiteds.
I like unlimited, but to me, I know they're doing this on purpose because we're the ones that are buying it. But they were like, "You liked Justice League Unlimited, didn't you? When you were a child, you liked the word unlimited because that unlimited potential. Why don't you just head over with your unlimited funds that you make because you're a millennial and you can't just afford to live on one job? And why don't you head over and buy our overpriced comic books? But you'll enjoy it. Don't worry. And you'll keep doing it anyway."
Yeah. Which Justice League Unlimited is a new book in the All In series with art by Dan Mora, written by Mark Waid. So I'm also enjoying that. It's only like 2 or 3 issues deep on that, but I'm enjoying Justice League Unlimited. So another recommendation. I thought this was interesting, boys. I don't speak Spanish. My wife speaks Spanish, but I did not get her to translate this. But ECC. Oh, you say it, Tim. You
No,
said it.
I'm not gonna say it. But the best part about that is I thought you were still talking about Superman Unlimited, and you're
Oh.
like, I don't know, I don't speak Spanish. And I was like, okay, good for you, man. Like, tell us your feelings. Like,
ECC Ediciones is the publisher responsible for distributing DC Comics in Spain, and they faced a potential suspension of their activities in January. So obviously we don't, it doesn't affect us here, but it's interesting that the Spanish market, like you don't think about the other markets in the world. Obviously Superman, one of the most famous characters, not just comic book characters, one of the most recognizable figures in the world. So the fact that this publisher, the implications of the availability of Superman comics in this just one market is interesting to me. So I'll put a link in the show notes wherever they are, so you can check that out if you speak Spanish.
I remember when Frank and I were doing Supergirl TV talk, I would just out of kind of base curiosity, I would go and see where the show was popular, because like, where is Supergirl or the Super Family popular in other parts of the world besides the U.S.? It was fascinating to see like what other places really care about this character besides the States. And I remember, I think it was Germany was like really high.
That sounds right to me, because I remember that we had a population that listens to the podcast that were in Germany. So that tracks.
That is interesting. Yeah. I'm curious about that. In a lot of countries, like what is popular and how does it compare to the United States? And then lastly, boys, I know neither one of you are big video game players, but I did want to talk about this because Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League was a game that came out last year, and they just released their final update after Rocksteady Studios had came out and said, okay, here's our content plan. Here's our map of all the things we're going to release, right? So over the course of the last year, they kind of slowly dripped. Here's the stuff that's going to happen, because spoiler alert for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Basically, the Justice League got taken over by Brainiac, and they were all evil. They all went rogue. So the Suicide Squad, hired by Amanda Waller, had to take out the Justice League and kill the Justice League. But what ended up happening was they destroyed Brainiac, but then he had 13 other Brainiacs in the multiverse that you had to go stop. So that was like the ending of the game was, okay, we killed this Brainiac. Now we got 13 other Brainiacs that we got to go kill. So that's what you got to go do for the rest of time. So this final update came out, and basically everything that they said happened in the game, they just erased it. So in the game, Batman, who is the Kevin Conroy Arkham video game Batman, this is the Rocksteady Studios Batman, which this goes back to Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight, and this is like a revered version of Batman, this video game franchise. Kevin Conroy, like I said, Paul Dini was a writer on a lot of the games, and it was like huge. So that Batman in this game gets shot in the face by Harley Quinn. He's just sitting on a bench. She comes up and shoots him in the head with a gun. Caused huge uproar. As you can imagine, this is not just any Batman. It's just, this is the quintessential.
Right.
Kevin Conroy had just passed away.
And this was technically, people thought what was his last appearance as Batman, and it was him getting murdered.
Yes.
Not great.
So that was not good. Superman was killed. Like the whole Justice League was killed. So this update comes out. This is within the last week that this came out. All of a sudden, in a cutscene that is not even a 3D rendered cutscene, like the whole game is 3D rendered. This is a 2D. Like it felt like the cheapest form of. Let's just get this out of the way. and it's Harley Quinn doing the voiceover. It's not even, they couldn't even get the voice actors to come back because there's other characters in the final thing that they released. So you can watch it on YouTube. It's like, it feels like the cheapest thing possible.
It really was, because the
And
game lost tons of money. People
that's
didn't
true.
buy it, so
And
Oh,
sure
really?
they went for the
I
cheap.
actually liked the game myself, but it received very bad reviews. And like Tim said, it ended up losing WB's video game division $200 million. But
Okay, I can see why they probably didn't put a lot of money towards the ending. Yeah, all
I
right.
wish they would have. Now they did get Tara Strong to come back and do Harley Quinn, which I love her. I love her Harley Quinn, but it just felt so cheap that that was the way they did it. Batman was like, "Hey guys, that was a clone. I'm back." Like the Kevin Conroy Batman, it was like, "No, he was here the whole time." Superman comes out.
I do have a question though, because I haven't watched
Yes.
it. So it's Harley Quinn saying that Batman said that it was a clone, right? It's not like
Yes.
Kevin
Right.
Conroy's. They used footage.
It's
or
her doing the voice of Batman. Like she's
I
doing
see.
it. She's imitating Batman, and she does it for
Totally
Superman too.
reliable, all the time reliable. Harley Quinn, never an
Well,
unreliable narrator at all
they
telling us
they
what happened. I
I
understand.
could see, so it does seem like that, but this is like, it's showing you the events, but it's just her doing her narration. But they are telling you that this is the actual events that happened, but she's like trying to put a funny spin on it. But
Yeah.
it felt tone deaf, and it just was very a strange way to end this. Like it just, and they fired a bunch of people afterwards. It was like nothing, almost nothing good came out of this. Oh, and by the way, all the Justice League was alive except for Wonder Woman. All like, and Wonder Woman was the only character that was helping you along the way. She was the only one that did not get turned bad by Brainiac, and she was like helping you and the voice of reason, and died a warrior's death. Superman ended up killing her, and at the end they're just like, "Oh, here's a statue of Wonder Woman. Everybody's back. Hey guys." And there's a statue of Wonder Woman. Oh yeah, she's dead still. It was like, what is going on? Who wrote
Sucks.
this? So
Wow.
that, I just wanted to tell you guys about that because it was just this long journey that led up to nothing, to nowhere. So very disappointed about
That's
that.
a
What we've
shame.
learned from this is
That
people
sucks.
are really tired of evil versions of their heroes. Like, there are enough evil people in the world and in comics. You don't also need to make the heroes evil.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I'm interested. How far is DC going to go on that? Because they've been pushing Amanda Waller a lot in Peacemaker, in the comic storyline that just happened, that just wrapped up, that turned into the All In, and the Suicide Squad game. There's just a ton of push for Amanda Waller, and then also Suicide Squad. Like, oh, she was in Creature Commandos,
Hmm.
and like,
I mean, I wouldn't call it a.
what is?
I mean, like she is a character. They're elevating her character from being a B character that people don't know to an A character because she has depth and range and good pathos. So
I
I
think it's
don't
more
mind it at all.
the amount. Like she was in all those things back to back to back. She was also in the what was the Superman anime that we talked about here? My Adventures with Superman.
My
She was
Adventures,
in that, the
That's
last
right.
season of
Yeah.
that. And it just felt like, why is DC using her so much? Like that's just, I don't mind them uplifting her or like rising or bringing her up. It was just, why are they doing it so much, like back to
She's
back to back?
she's generalized enough that she can create good MacGuffins. I think that's what it is. You know, like it's an easy step in. She's in some ways a very easy step in villain. She has enough good reasoning that you can keep reusing her again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I really don't mind her continual inclusion. I mean, like back in the day, Frank's wearing a Smallville hat. I remember when Pam was it Pam Greer? Not Pam Greer.
Pam
Yeah.
Grier, yeah.
Oh yeah, she played. Yeah. Mhm.
Well, you know, and that was huge. You're like, whoa, Amanda Waller. That's crazy that I'm seeing Amanda Waller on screen. And now I've seen more Amanda Wallers than I've seen Superman. It's
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
wild.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I think she works well in controlled doses and
Yeah.
like once a year maybe, or
Well-
But for me, it was like I guess because I played the video game, I watched every one of those TV shows, I read the comics. Like I just got oversaturated with Amanda
Sure.
Waller.
You know
Well,
what?
we
She's
know James Gunn does like Suicide Squad and does like, Waller. So it could be part of it. It's just a bias on his part,
Yeah.
I'm
now that
honestly
he's
glad
running
it's just
things.
not the Joker. Like they've like transitioned
Ooh.
to
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
oversaturated
Right.
character.
Yeah.
And like, but it's one that fits into more stories. Like she can be a Superman villain. She can be a Batman villain. She can be a whole Justice League villain. She
Yeah.
can like
That's
whatever.
true. She's
Because
flexible. She's
she's very
adaptable.
flexible.
But
Yeah.
and also she's not an overused character already, right? Where arguably the
Mhm.
Joker already is,
Right.
and then if you go
Right.
hard on the Joker on top of that, it can get grating.
Right.
But
Yeah.
she doesn't have as much exposure over the years, in her history as a
Yeah.
character. So there is sort of more story to tell for her.
And she's not specifically tied to one character. It's
Yes.
not like she's
Mhm.
like a Lex
Yes.
Luthor, where like I associate him with Superman. Sure, he can be
Right.
a villain for anybody, but like when like there was a arc in Batman months a couple of years ago where like Lex Luthor was the bad guy for like 3 issues, and I was like, this is
Mm.
weird. I don't like it.
Mm.
I mean,
Mm.
I like it in that I like Lex Luthor and I like Batman, and they are very similar in their own ways, and so it can be an interesting storyline. But I'm like, you go over there, like you belong over there,
Right.
or against the entire DC universe. It's very strange for you just to be coming across Batman. It felt to me like, and in this issue, the Flash is going to fight Black Manta. And you're like, okay,
Yeah.
choices have been made. I am like on board, but not, but Amanda Waller doesn't have that baggage. Like she's associated with the Suicide Squad, which is already in kind of an open range group. So it's just, it's all
Yeah.
over the place. She
Yeah.
could be anywhere.
I
And I'm
think
okay with that.
Yeah, I think the thing about Amanda Waller is it leads into the heroes as villains or the villains as heroes thing that I think is now saturated because it turned from Suicide Squad into Creature Commandos, which is Creature Commandos was the exact same thing as Suicide Squad, but oh, these are monsters. Like they're
Right.
not they're bad guys, but they're monsters. So that is starting to get a little played out. And we don't have time on this episode, but I do want to get both of your guys' thoughts on the there's got to be a word for this, but turning the bad guys into anti-heroes, like the Harley
Yeah.
Quinn show that's on Max right now. Like the the good guys are like losers on that show, and the bad guys are like, oh, these are the cool guys, and these are the guys that these are the antagonists. These are the guys that are pushing the plots forward. And what is it about DC now where they're kind of fascinated with that, from Peacemaker to Suicide Squad to Creature Commandos to Harley Quinn and even Kite Man? Let's talk about that on a future
Yes.
episode because I
Let's.
want
Yeah,
to get your
I
guys'
do have
thoughts on that.
thoughts. So yeah,
Yes.
remind me
So
next month.
yes, if you guys enjoyed our talk here today, first of all, leave a comment down below. Let us know. But also check out Beer with Geeks because these guys are doing the Lord's work every week. They're talking about pop culture, they're talking about everything that's happening in their worlds, and they're also drinking delicious beverages. So I love what these guys are doing on Beer with Geeks. So definitely check them out. Frank, Tim, thank you very much for falling for my trap and joining me here on This Month in Superman. This was a fantastic episode. I loved it.
Thanks for
Loved
having
it.
us. It's the coziest trap I've ever been in.
Yes. Delightful.
Yeah.
Love what you've done with the place.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, you guys don't forget, next month we're going to be back for This Month in Superman, and we're going to be leading up to the James Gunn Superman movie. And once that comes out, we're going to have a great time talking about it here on This Comic Cooks.